Alright guys, in the last video we took a look at the mouse events. Now we're going to look at some input and form events. So let's go ahead and create a couple variables up here. I'm going to create one called form, and I want to set it to document.querySelector, and I'm just going to select it by the form tag. Now it's important to mention that if you have a big application with multiple forms, you're going to want to be more specific than just form. Use the ID or the class or something like that. In this case, we only have one form, so that's fine. I also want to create a task input variable and set that to document dot, and let's use get element by ID for this one. We haven't used that in a while because this input has an ID of task. Okay, if we look at the input right here, it has an ID of task, so we're grabbing it by that. So let's take this form and let's add an event listener to it, and let's listen for a submit event, and then we're going to call run event, which we're going to create down here. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing that we did in the last video. We're going to say event type and just set that to e.type. Okay, be sure to pass e in here. So now if we go ahead and save and we click add task, you see we get event type submit. Now a lot of times when you submit a form, it will actually redirect to the same page. It's not doing it here, and I'm pretty sure it's because it has something to do with the materialized JavaScript, but usually it does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this form an action. So we're going to say action, and we'll just set it to index.php. Alright, so if we do that and we submit, it's going to, it fires off the event, and it's going to do console log. You can watch down here, it'll flash real quick, and then it gets redirected. So that's the default behavior of a form. Just like with a link, the default behavior is to redirect to that href. So to stop that from happening, we just do prevent default, e.prevent default. So now even though the action goes to index.php, if I click, it's not going to redirect. It's going to stop that behavior from happening. All right, so usually when you do a submit, you're going to want to use this. All right, another thing you usually want to do when you submit a form is get the input fields, get the value. So what we would do here is let's do console log, and we'll set task input, which is this input here. We already have it in a variable, and then we want to get the value, so dot value, and save. And the default is walk the dog. If I submit, we get walk the dog. If I put something else in here and submit, we get that value. Okay, now we have a hard-coded value of walk the dog. I could just easily remove that from here, but if you want to clear out your form from JavaScript, what you can do is take the input variable here, task input, and just do dot value equals nothing, and save, and that will get rid of it. So this is something that you often run after you submit a form so that you clear it out. Okay, for instance, when we make this into an application and we add a task, we're going to want this to clear out, and that's how we do it. Let's say clear input. All right, and down here we'll say get input value, and now what I'm going to do is just comment out this stuff, and then comment out, actually I guess we'll comment that out. Now I want to take a look at some events that we can run on the actual input, not the form. So we're going to say task input dot add event listener, and we're going to look at the event key down. Okay, key down, and then we're going to call run event. And just like with mouse down, it fires off when your key actually goes down. So if I press, you'll see that it fires off, and it just keeps firing off as I type. All right, now you may want to catch the input from each key down. So what we can do here is we can console.log and we can say e.target. Remember, target is the element the event happens on, which in this case is the input. Now the value is whatever we're typing in. So if we say target.value and save, and then we type, you can see it's going to log everything we type. All right, and we can take this a step further and output that somewhere on the screen. So if we want to take, actually, you know what we'll do is we'll set a variable called heading, set it to, let's do query selector H5. So we're going to grab this H5 right here, and what I want to do is output whatever we type into here. So we'll say heading dot, actually let's do heading dot inner text and set that to e.target dot value and save. And now when I type, you'll see that the heading will actually include whatever I type, which is kind of neat. It's kind of like data binding in Angular. All right, and you can see that through this course you're going to see things that kind of give you the foundation of how some of these other frameworks work under the hood. All right, I'm going to comment that out. I just wanted to show you that we can do stuff like that. So let's take a look at another event. I'm just going to put a comment in here. This is key down. In addition to key down, we have key up. So let's copy that and comment that out, and we'll change this to key up. Okay, now key up it's going to do the same thing, except it's when you release the key. I'm going to just hit down the letter K, no event, I let go, and there it is, key up. Okay, so it just fires off when you lift the key up. Okay, and in addition to that, we also have key press, which is just kind of a generalized key event. So as soon as I press it, it fires off. I'm going to comment this out too, so we're not logging everything. All right, so that's key press. Let's see. So now those are the key events. We have some other input events like focus. So we'll say task input add event listener to focus or for focus, and we'll call run event. Okay, now focus is when you click inside of an input and you set it to the focus mode. So I'm just going to click in here and we get event type focus. Now the opposite of that would be blur. Okay, when you click outside of an input. So let's go ahead and say blur. Comment this out. And if I click in and then click out, when we click out, we get the blur event. Okay, we also have cut and paste are actually events. So we'll say cut, change this to cut. And now if I put something in here and I go ahead and I right click and cut, that fires off the event. If I do a Control Z, that also, did it fire it off? Let me see. Control Z. I guess that doesn't fire it off. Huh. Oh, I'm sorry, Control X. Let's try that. So Control X, that does work. All right. Control Z is actually paste. And speaking of paste, that is also an event. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'll go ahead in here and I'll right click and paste, and you'll see we get event type paste. All right, if I do a Control Z is not paste. What is Control Z? I think I'm having kind of a brain fart here. What is Control Z? Undo. That's right, it's undo. So Control V, paste, that'll fire off the event as well. All right, so another thing that we have here that we can use on inputs is the actual input event. And what that does is it'll fire off on any kind of input event. All right, so let's go ahead, let's copy this. And I'm just going to change this to input and just go ahead and start typing, and you'll see event type input. All right, if I were to cut, that's also an input. If I were to paste, that's an input. Okay, anything we do with this input is going to fire off with this event, okay, or with this type. All right, now I also want to mention the change event, and we use this on a select list. So we don't have a select list, so I'm just going to put one in here real quick. We don't need a name and an ID. So we'll do select. Let's put in a couple options here. We'll just do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now if I save this, you're not going to see it because with Materialize, you actually need to add a little bit of jQuery at the bottom to be able to see the select list, just because of how it works. So what I'm going to do just for this example is disable Materialize by just commenting out the CSS, just so we can see the actual select list right here. All right, and then we're going to go to our script and we're going to say const select, and let's say document.querySelector select, and then down here this is going to be a change event, so we'll say select dot add event listener. We're going to listen for a change, and then we're going to do run event. All right, so now if I go over here and I go ahead and change it to 2, we get event type change. Change it to 3, event type change. And we should be able to get the value if I go ahead and uncomment this. And now if I choose 2, you can see we can get that 2, 3, we can get that 3. All right, so I'm going to just get rid of that select. I'm sorry, not get rid of the select. I'm going to uncomment that so we have our style back, but I just wanted to show you that real quick as well. Alright guys, so I think that's going to be it for now. In the next video, we're going to talk about event bubbling and event delegation, which are really important parts of JavaScript and the whole event system.